I want to thank you all for being here. It means everything to us here at Public Narrative to be able to celebrate the 28th Annual Community Media Awards. Just last year, we lost our co-founder, Hank DeZutter, and we want to send a tribute tonight, to dedicate this event to Hank's memory. I didn't get a chance to spend a whole lot of time with Hank before he passed away, but I did get a chance to meet him at the 2019 awards. And he beamed with pride that, a Black woman would be leading this organization for the first time in the organization's history. So I am what stands between you and a beautiful evening, and I will not hold you up. I'm going to hand it over to Cheryl Corley. Cheryl, there's so much that I can say about Cheryl, but Cheryl was one of the first Studs Terkel Community Media Award winners in 1994. And Cheryl tells this story about how when the co-founders and Studs decided to even create this award, she was one of the first that was contacted to see if she would accept it, and she graciously said yes. And the co-founders were perhaps more excited than she was. And so here we are. I want to say, about 8 years now you've hosted for us? Yeah, virtually, in person. I call on Cheryl, she's right there, and I really and truly appreciate her. Not only has she won the Studs Terkel Community Media Award, but just in 2020, she was awarded the Chicago Headlines Club Lifetime Achievement Award. So many congratulations for that. I am going to hand it over. We learned some things back in 2019 that she too attended Bradley University, so she is my fellow Bradley Brave. I'm going to hand it over to Cheryl Corley, who is indeed our MC for the evening.
So tonight we celebrate journalists with Public Narrative's Studs Terkel Community Media Award. There's also the Ripple Effect Award that we'll be presenting tonight, and the Uplifting Voices Award, and tonight a new award, the People's Choice Award. There are 4 extremely worthy finalists, and we will announce the winner of that award tonight. Suspense fills the room. So there have been lots of stories over the past year that we have been covering. Of course, in just a few days, the city will swear in a new mayor. The city council is going to be full of new faces. Talk about feeling old. It's definitely a new era. I know none of these people. Of course, I covered City Hall many, many years ago. Chicago and the state of Illinois have become a sanctuary when it comes to abortion rights in the aftermath of the Supreme Court ruling. There was the horrific Highland Park shooting and horrific shootings that occur throughout this city almost every day. A showdown over immigration with Texas busing immigrants to Chicago and other cities, and a lot of stories that tonight's awardees made sure that we all know about. Their reporting keeps true to Studs Terkel's practice of listening deeply and searching for truth. In just 5 days, Studs Terkel would have been 111 years old. If he had lived that long. He was close. He died when he was 96, nearly 14 years ago. His ashes were buried and blended with those of his wife, Ida. They were buried at Bughouse Square, that historic outdoor free speech venue that was so vital to Studs and others during its heyday. Studs wrote many books. Probably you've read many of them or some of them. He was the host of the Studs Terkel Show on WFMT radio for more than 4 decades. Oh, I'm seeing that picture. And he interviewed hundreds of people, and he called the people he interviewed or profiled not voiceless. He called them the uncelebrated. So he listened and ultimately celebrated them and made us appreciate the wisdom that they offered. So in his book about Studs Terkel, author and oral historian Alan Weeder wrote that Studs didn't just provide a microphone for people. He also taught those he interviewed, as well as listeners and readers, that we are not impotent, that we had much to say, and that our voices and our actions, not a savior politician, could change the world. And that's one of the key driving forces behind Public Narrative. an organization that is all about changing the narrative and uplifting voices. It's an organization that teaches organizations how to work with the media and connecting journalists to the people they need to tell a fuller story. So I want us to applaud Jamira and the rest of those who work and volunteer on behalf of Public Narrative. You know, their work allows us to shine a light on the dedication and talent of journalists and activists out there doing the work of talking to people and investigating and reporting and telling stories. So we're going to turn now to the journalist whose work exemplifies the Studs Terkel tradition. First is Carlos Ballesteros, who began his Chicago career as a Report for American Fellow at the Chicago Sun-Times. He now works at Injustice Watch, the nonprofit journalism organization that delves deep into the court system. And here to tell us more about Carlos is Jonah Newman, the managing editor of Injustice Watch.
Since he returned to his native Chicago in 2018 as a Report for America Fellow at the Sun-Times, Carlos Ballesteros has focused on telling the stories of Chicago's immigrant communities and the powerful systems, institutions, and individuals that make life difficult for them, even in a so-called sanctuary city. At the Sun-Times, Carlos wrote about how gentrification in Pilsen was emptying out the neighborhood's once vibrant public schools, and about the intersection of the criminal justice system and immigration enforcement, lifting up the experiences of people who face deportation based on minor offenses like shoplifting and speeding. He has continued this critical work since joining Injustice Watch in 2020. Last year, Carlos and the Chicago Tribune's Laura Rodriguez Presa wrote a series of stories about the growing population of older undocumented immigrants. These older adults are shut out of Social Security and Medicare, even though many of them have paid into these programs for decades. Carlos and Laura highlighted the resilience of immigrant communities in the face of these challenges and the ways that family members and friends come together to help their aging loved ones. More recently, Carlos investigated the failures of the Chicago Police Department and other agencies to support undocumented victims of crime who want to apply for legal status through the U visa program. The through line of all of Carlos's reporting is that he centers and uplifts the voices, experiences, and humanity of immigrants and their families. While reporting, Carlos ensures that the people he's interviewing understand what it means to talk to a reporter and takes great pains to protect his sources from possible repercussions. Carlos pushes to ensure that his work is translated into Spanish so that the people he's writing for and about are able to access the stories he writes. Carlos absolutely embodies the spirit of Studs Terkel in telling the stories of everyday Chicagoans speaking truth to power. He reports with empathy and care, always making sure that he's doing right by the people who have entrusted him with their stories. I'm proud to serve as Carlos's editor, and I'm honored to introduce him as a 2023 Studs Terkel Award winner.
Please welcome tonight's first recipient of the 2023 Studs Terkel Community Media Award, Carlos Ballesteros.
Good evening. Hello. Buenas noches. I thought I could come up here without preparing anything, and then I changed my mind last minute, and I was trying to put something into words on my phone as I sat down. So, first of all, thank you to my family, especially my mom and my girlfriend Citlali, with whom I wouldn't be up here tonight. Thank you to the folks at Public Narrative, including the ghost of Studs Terkel, who I'm sure is here with us too. And thank you to my colleagues at Injustice Watch who've pushed me to do the best work that I've ever done. And thank you to my colleagues at every other place I've ever worked at for also doing the same when I was there. And most importantly, thank you to all the people who agreed to speak with me, who opened up their lives, shared with me their most intimate details and most traumatic experiences, even though they didn't have to, and even though most of the time there was nothing in it for them, except to expose the truth and to hopefully bring accountability to the people who had done wrong to them. It's because of them that I'm here, and I wish I could thank them in a better way, but I hope this suffices. And lastly, before I step off the stage, it's not lost on me that the climate against immigrants today is extremely dangerous, and the persecution they face, especially the ones who are just arriving, is perhaps never before seen in this country. And I only ask that you folks here today please see through the bullshit and do not listen to the hateful rhetoric and the fear-mongering and everything else that's being spewed against them, and see them for who they are. Thank you very much.
Our next Studs Terkel Community Media Award recipient is a reporter with the investigative outlet ProPublica. The mission of that organization is to shine a light on abuses of power and betrayal of public trust. And that is exactly what Jody Cohen does. She writes about juvenile justice, about children who are mistreated in various systems, but primarily in schools. She shines a light on very troubling practices. Here's Steve Mills, the Deputy Midwest Editor of ProPublica, who will talk about Jody.
Jody Cohen's reporting changes lives. Her reporting on a young woman in Michigan named Grace, who had been sent to a juvenile detention facility after she failed to do her online schoolwork during the pandemic, led to Grace's release, as well as to reforms to Michigan's juvenile justice system. Real-world changes to the lives of Michigan's young people. Her reporting on the use of seclusion and restraint in Illinois schools, done with the Chicago Tribune's Jennifer Smith Richards, led to changes in how school officials deal with students. No longer can schools in our state lock children up, many of them with disabilities, in seclusion rooms. No longer can they use dangerous face-down restraints against them. Children are better off because of this reporting. And her reporting on the ticketing of students for minor misbehavior that typically would be dealt with in the principal's office, again with Jennifer Smith Richards, prompted the state's top school official to urge schools to halt the practice, which many schools have done. The state comptroller, meanwhile, has stopped collecting debt from these tickets. Children and their families are significantly better off because of this reporting. In all of these stories, Jody musters tenacious reporting and muscular writing against topics that in many cases have gone unexplored for too long. Then she shines a light on them, and officials have little choice but to respond with reform, to change laws for the better. Jody's work is admirable in so many ways, and I'm so proud of the work that she has done and the impact she has accomplished. I'm looking forward to whatever she does next, because I know it too will change lives. Congratulations, Jody.
Congratulations, Jody. Let's welcome and applaud her.
This is really intimidating. But thanks for allowing me to say a few words. I wrote this morning on deadline, because that's what we do, except Carlos really wrote it on deadline. Then I showed it to my unofficial editor, my husband David, and he said it would be funnier if I said I wrote it during cocktail hour, but we're going to stick with the facts, because that's also what we do. So I really am truly honored to be recognized with this award. I love what I do, and it's an honor in itself to do it every single day. I have a sticker on my laptop, and it's a quote from Joseph Medill, and it says, "Write boldly and tell the truth fearlessly." And that's what I strive to do as an investigative reporter. But investigative journalism, of course, isn't all about exposing wrongdoing by public officials like at U of I. It's also about giving voice to the vulnerable, or as Studs would say, the uncelebrated. People who often want to make the world better, not just for themselves, but for others. And as we head into Mother's Day weekend, I'm thinking about mothers who have trusted me to tell the stories about their children at the most difficult moments in their lives. And I take that responsibility seriously, and I'm going to quickly, tell you about 3 of them. First, Judy Clark. 23 years ago, she had the courage to allow me to tell the story about her daughter, 15-year-old Samantha Reed, who died after she drank a Mountain Dew that she did not know was laced with the date rape drug GHB. Judy didn't want any other mother to go through that pain, and she believed telling her daughter's story could have that power. The exposure created by Judy talking about what had happened to her daughter led to GHB being categorized as a Schedule I controlled substance, and the men responsible for her death were convicted. Second, as Steve mentioned, the mom of Grace, a 15-year-old student in Michigan who was incarcerated during the pandemic when she didn't do her schoolwork, which was a condition of her probation. Her mother had not seen her daughter in weeks when she had called me out of complete desperation, asking whether there was a ProPublica Michigan, and there was not. There is now. Yay. And for the next hours and then weeks, she shared her family's story and the injustice that was happening. The story about Grace, published by ProPublica, galvanized the community, led to protests and appeals, and eventually, weeks later, she was released. Grace is now in college, and as Steve said, Michigan's juvenile justice system is going under a complete overhaul. So I finally, one more quick one, the mom of Gabe, a boy with autism in Jacksonville, Illinois. He suffered he and his brother actually both suffered at a school in Jacksonville for children with disabilities. Gabe's stepmom had heard that ProPublica and the Chicago Tribune were working on a story about the Garrison School, and she reached out and then allowed us to meet their family and tell their family's story. And we went to their home, and the family said, Gabe's dad actually said, "We've been waiting for someone to come here for so long to investigate." So I can't do my job without the courage of people like the moms of Samantha, Grace, and Gabe, and I wanted to publicly name them and thank them for trusting me to tell their stories. I want to thank Public Narrative, and I want to thank my family for all of their support that allows me to be both a mom and a journalist.
You know, Melissa Sanchez has won numerous awards, both national and local, and now let's welcome her into the Studs Terkel Family Award.
If you've read Melissa Sanchez's stories, you'll notice two things. They're deeply reported, and they have enormous heart. You see those qualities in her stories about immigrant children who go to school in the Chicago suburbs during the day and work factory jobs at night. And you see it in her stories that, with surgical precision, showed how the city's ticketing system disproportionately affected Black and other motorists of color. A marriage of data and narrative that made those stories so much more vital and led to substantial reforms in the city and state. And most recently, you saw it in her story, reported with Mariam Jamil of ProPublica, on the death of an 8-year-old boy from Nicaragua on a dairy farm in Wisconsin. That story captured the aching details of the lives of the boy and his father, and it showed how failures in law enforcement and other government agencies contributed to the father being wrongly blamed for his son's awful death. What's more, it showed how a little boy can die on a farm, and nobody makes the effort to understand the dangers that might lead to other injuries or death. I admire Melissa's work so much. The reporting she does at ProPublica, stories that live at the intersection of labor and immigration, are the kinds of stories that Studs would appreciate, I think. In fact, I think the sorts of people Melissa often talks with, and writes about are just the sort of people Studs would want to talk with too. Congratulations, Melissa.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for this. I remember being at one of these award ceremonies a few years ago when Sarah Karp was one of the winners, and just being in complete awe of the folks who were recognized then. I prepare a lot beforehand because I get so scared. I just wanted to say a few things. I've never been really excited about doing traditional accountability stories. I'm like not a sexy scoops person. I'm not a political person. The kind of stuff that gets a lot of the prizes or attention. I've always been drawn to stories about the little people, like the trampled, the exploited, people who are invisible. People like my parents, immigrants, those who like live in the shadows. Sorry. I also drank 2 glasses of wine, so it's I thought it would make it easier. Anyway, but I worried a lot when I got hired at ProPublica that I wouldn't be able to do the kind of work that my colleagues did. That I couldn't see things from the big picture all the time. I couldn't articulate like the structural forces at play. I couldn't tell you what the nut graph was right away. I was too obsessed with like the details of the little people and all their situations, and it's taken me some time to like believe and accept that it's okay to do journalism the way that I do it, like from the bottom up. And thank you to Public Narrative for valuing that, for seeing that. And I'm really grateful to like work at a place that has like allowed me to do this. Like, thank you to Steve Mills, my editor, who has supported me for all these years, who told me 5 years ago that he'd never met a person who cries so much. To Louise Kiernan, who hired me. I was 8 months pregnant when I interviewed. I didn't even really realize I was being interviewed, but here I am. To my colleagues at this organization, especially Joelle Deeb, who's become my best friend, and people of color like find each other in places, and we found each other, and I'm really grateful for ProPublica and for Chicago for bringing us together. And having 2 kids now and trying to balance work and a marriage and anything else you want to do in life is impossible. So thank you, Marcos, my husband, for suffering with me and for being here tonight to celebrate. So thank you.
And our final Studs Terkel Community Media Award recipient is Tiffany Walden. Tiffany is the editor-in-chief of The Tribe, a digital media platform that focuses on reshaping the narrative of Black Chicago. You might also call Tiffany a 21st century Lorraine Hansberry. Her storytelling and her journalism about Black people and Black places and things is her form of activism. So here to tell us more about her is author and lecturer Deborah Douglas, who is now at Northwestern's Medill School of Journalism.
The Tribe's Tiffany Walden is an inspiring leader in Chicago journalism and beyond. Her well-rounded talents include moral clarity, intellect, and unmarked authenticity. Now is the perfect time to amplify Tiffany and her leadership and accomplishments. What she has done with the Tribe and for Chicago is astounding. As founding editor-in-chief, Tiffany has stimulated a new appetite for news for the next generation. And by that, I don't mean just young people, but anyone who is invested in inclusive, contextual, and proportional coverage of Chicago. I'm aware that the demand for the Tribe has grown outside of its original target of young Black Chicagoans to Black Chicago to anyone who wants the urban tea, as Tiffany has told me. That's a psychographic and a way of being that hasn't been recognized or served, not the way the Tribe does it. The Tribe shows so much promise for scale and impact thanks to the digital media platform's strong point of view and on the strength of its ability to serve Chicago like Tiffany's team did during the recent mayoral election and during the early stages of the pandemic as 2 examples. Tiffany Walden and her team really talk to us, not at us, like they know how we actually live. While Chicago benefits from Tiffany's editorial voice, the nation is listening to her. Tiffany is a trusted voice in journalism and a model of success in philanthropic circles that have changed the rules to support her work. I personally am on record having recognized her work in a Chicago Magazine cover story and in Neiman reports at Harvard University. In addition to the Knights Award, Tiffany Walden is headed to the next phase of greatness as a Knight Fellow at Stanford University. Dear Tiffany, you embody everything about the Studs Terkel tradition of centering working, striving people as the main characters in this story called life. This recognition was made for you. Bravo.
Bravo indeed. Tiffany Walden, let's welcome her to the stage. Come on.
Thank you so much for having me here today. Thank you to Public Narrative. Thank you to everyone who have supported the tribe. Deborah Douglas for this beautiful video. I'm speechless. The thing about this work is that, it really doesn't stop. This morning, I wanted to sit down and write down a beautiful and eloquent speech like, my colleagues here have done today. But then, we had a really big story coming out about Paul Vallis and the way that he tried to buy the black vote in Black Chicago, because the work doesn't stop. And, I dived into helping our editorial team put the story out and find images and graphics to put the story out and to craft the narrative on social media so that we can meet our audience there too, and put the newsletter together as well so we can meet our audience there. And I just never thought that we would be in this place where our work is being recognized in this way. I'm sorry, y'all. And I'm not a crier. First and foremost, I want to thank the platonic love of my life, Morgan Elise Johnson, who now is known as the young black woman from WGN. She's my best friend, an amazing filmmaker, and the co-founder and editor-in-chief of The Tribe. And to be honest with you, The Tribe would not exist without Morgan's fearless sacrifice. I'm sorry, see? Publisher of The Tribe. I'm just overwhelmed with emotions. But The Tribe would not exist without Morgan's fearless sacrifice and vision for the future of black media. She pulled me from Orlando, from a job that I had at the Orlando Sentinel, and encouraged me to come back home. My family thought I was crazy because who leaves a journalism job to come back home and freelance? But Morgan saw things that I couldn't see. I grew up on the west side of Chicago, and people didn't have the same types of opportunity that some people in other parts of the city had. And I knew I wanted to be a journalist, but I didn't know exactly what that meant. I didn't know if that was something I would have access to. And I knew that my community desperately needed its story told. It's been in the same condition that it's been in since 1968 with the King uprisings. And I also know that the people in my community are beautiful people, and that, I had a beautiful childhood, and we had fun. We played games, the same games that you play in Lincoln Park or anywhere else. We played those same games as kids. So it's an honor to be able to tell Black Chicago's story. It's an honor to be able to shed light on Black Chicago's story and the racist players who are trying to take advantage of it. We work in the tradition of abolitionist journalism, so thinking about the Freedom's Journal being the first black newspaper, thinking about Ida B. Wells and all the anti-lynching reporting that she did during her time, even though she was, being threatened every day and attacked every day for the work that she was doing. We're getting those same threats, and covering the election. And I just want to thank our team who every day they show up to do this work, and they're just as passionate to do this work. And I wouldn't be here today without our team taking that risk of applying to work at a small startup media that me, Morgan, and David came up with. There was no big name attached to what we were doing, no financial things attached to what we were doing, but they took that risk and came. I also want to thank my family, my mom, my sister, my cousin Tinky, my uncles. My Uncle Sonny, he passed away, and I remember when we started the Tribe, he was one of the first people always to like a Tribe post on Facebook and just say, go Superstar, before anybody else knew what the Tribe was. And I also want to thank my grandmother, who, without her, I wouldn't be the person that you all know today. So just thank you to everybody for your support, your prayers, your protection, and we'll continue to tell Black Chicago's story, and I hope you stay along for the ride. Thank you.
Congratulations again, Tiffany. You know, since 2014, Public Narrative's Uplifting Voices Award has honored an individual journalist or change maker who elevates the voices of people in Chicago communities. This year's awardee is Jamie Nesbitt Golden of Block Club Chicago. One of Jamie's nominators calls her a superstar because of the way she introduces us through her reporting to the city's unseen gems. So how does she do it? She keeps her ear to the ground, collecting news and making sure the voices of those affected by it are included, whether it's a story about dancing crossing guards or firefighters or businesses in the Brownsville neighborhood or about a controversial high school being proposed to be built on the south side. We learn about community events and the work that people, leaders, and institutions do to keep neighborhoods vibrant and thriving. But while she details the needs and the struggles and joys in communities, she also holds those in power accountable. That's her. Jamie's work really creates a more connected Chicago. And the devotion she has for the city, for the Bronzeville neighborhood in particular, is reflected in her journalism. She has braved COVID. She has braved bullets. She has braved misogynoir to service the community that she loves and lives in. So we're going to hear a little bit more about Jamie from Melissa Drawn, the Director of Social Work at the Hannon Center in Detroit.
I've been reading the works of Jamie Nesbitt Golden for the past decade across various platforms. I have always been impressed by her talent as a writer and how she uses her voice to amplify issues and people who don't normally get that attention. In particular, what stands out to me is her work with the Block Club and how her focus on the community, the people of the community, their opinions, how that allows me to draw a parallel to my own community in Detroit. I think that Jamie does a great job embodying the ethics of journalism. I also feel that she's a fantastic writer and she more than deserves this award. I hope that she is able to celebrate herself, and I know that she'll go on and continue to do great things. Thank you.
Let's applaud Jamie Nesbitt Golden, this year's winner of Public Narrative's Uplifting Voices Award.
That was a surprise because Melissa and I have been friends for over a decade, and I was literally talking to her a few days ago, and she never told me that she was going to be doing that. I want to thank Block Club, because without Block Club giving me a chance after being out the game for a decade, I wouldn't be here. Also, my family, my husband, Kip, our son, Langston, Melissa, and our crew. We also have been doing this podcast called Nerdgasm Noir for the last decade, talking about nerd stuff, because we're nerdy Black chicks. But Melissa and our crew have been invaluable to me, especially during the pandemic, and I'm grateful for them. I wrote this yesterday on deadline, so, you don't get a Jamie Nesbitt Golden without a Joan Nesbitt or a Winifred Williams. And those were the two most important women in my life growing up. So I want to dedicate this award to them. 2 weeks ago, I got my first tattoo, and it's a shot glass with my mother's initials. And I stand here before you now because of her and because of the woman who gave her life. And I would not be here if not for the guidance of them. And they loved me fiercely and nurtured my dreams. And it was my grandmother who taught me the importance of empathy, and it was my mother who showed me the importance of community. Winnie introduced me to Mike Royko when she was an avid Chicago Tribune reader. So. And Mike Royko, in turn, introduced me to Studs Terkel. And Joan bought my first typewriter. For those of you who don't know what a typewriter is, it's like a computer without a screen or a hard drive or Reddit. But the first story I wrote was on that typewriter, and I was 8, and it was about like a pair of missing socks. I thought I was Agatha Christie. It was a weird thing. Real page turner. When I decided I wanted to become a journalist, it was my mother who, from her perch behind the bar where she served our neighbors for decades, found me my earliest freelancing gig, which was the South Street Journal. Shout out to the South Street Journal. They still owe me $25, but it's okay. And a local TV journalist I could annoy with questions, which was John Davis, who was a reporter at CBS. And so shout out to him too. For me, journalism has always been about advocacy. How can I improve my corner of the world? How do I tell the story in a way that honors the trust this person has given me? It's not an easy task or one I take lightly, and I do get a decent amount of hate mail from Bob from Naperville. But the people I have met along the way, the love I've received far outweighs the snark from the trolls. So thank you, Public Narrative, for this honor. Thank you to the community that has always held me down, and to the heroes who raised me. And as Mother's Day approaches, I'm reminded that though they are not here in flesh, their legacy lives on in me, and I'll continue to try my best to make them proud. Also, shout out to Block Club, my amazing colleagues, my fearless editors. Again, I am honored to work with such a tremendous, dedicated crew. So thank you guys.
Our next award this evening honors a journalist anywhere in the United States whose work has made an impact in this city and beyond. It's called the Ripple Effect Award. And this year, it goes to my longtime colleague and City Hall friend, Craig Dellimore. Craig has been the fabric of Chicago media for 40 years. He joined WBBM Radio in 1983 and became the political editor of the station in 2001. He has covered a multitude of stories that originated at Chicago City Hall or the state capitol. He's covered political conventions, Chicago's last 3 mayors, the campaign and election of President Barack Obama. Day in and day out, he works to keep the public informed. And on his interview show, At Issue, Craig has talked to hundreds of politicians, activists, and others, kind of like Studs Terkel used to do, you know. Allowing us to listen in on very incisive and informative conversations about housing, about the challenges of community policing, about other issues that face the city, Cook County, the state of Illinois, and the world. And it's not just about politics, though. Craig has brought us the news of other important and memorable stories, including the terrible tragedy of an American Eagle crash nearly 30 years ago in Roselawn, Indiana, stories about the resilience of farmers and other residents recovering from widespread flooding on the Mississippi River. Had good boots for that one, yeah. In addition to reporting and hosting a show, Craig has been a strong union leader, a 4-time president of SAG-AFTRA in Chicago, and a national officer as well. Let's hear from Craig about Eric Chaudron, the executive director of SAG-AFTRA here in Chicago.
So what to say about Craig Dellimore? I can tell you that from the first moment I met him, I thought he was a really wonderful human being. I first met him during my interview for this job at SAG-AFTRA. He was on the interview committee, and he was also president of the local at that point. And I remember when he questioned me, it was with respect and with grace. And I remember thinking, this guy's got a really good voice, and it was amazing. And, when I finally did get the job, I could not have felt more supported from a human being, and have not felt like somebody who got just landed in a better situation. I felt very blessed to have Craig as somebody there with the sage advice and the wisdom. He was a great mentor in a lot of ways, and so so from that standpoint, I've always respected Craig. But the thing that I wasn't aware of when I got here was just what an amazing professional he is. The first morning heading into work, I happened to put it on WBBM radio, and all of a sudden I hear Craig Dellamore reporting, and it kind of set me back a little bit. I guess I knew that he was working in radio, but I didn't realize in what capacity, and it was really shocking to hear his voice. So it was very pleasant, and I thought that was amazing. And of course, he has an incredible voice. That voice is unmistakable, and certainly something that is memorable. And just want to say that Craig is if Chicago is encapsulated in a person, it's Craig Dellamore. Even though he's from New York, he is the best that Chicago has to offer. He really is, and he's an amazing news person. Not just his work on WBBM, but he puts a lot of time into the public service broadcast that he does, talking to local civic leaders and political leaders here. And I make a point of, on every Saturday morning, going to XRT and listen to him do his interviews there. And I see him a lot on the WTTW Chicago Tonight roundtables every Friday. He's on there quite frequently, and he's just really has so much to offer. And I've always just been so impressed with him, both personally and professionally. And I just think that nobody deserves this award more than you, Craig. I have always respected you, and I think the rest of Chicago thinks so highly of you. And I think that you are so deserving of this award, and I think Barbara and Dale are just so fortunate to have you as a husband and father, and I think that I think that they are a wonderfully supportive family for you. And so I just want to say congratulations. You deserve this. We at SAG-AFTRA are just blessed to have you amongst our leadership, and Chicago is blessed to have you as a person who is one of the great communicators in Chicago, and your legacy will last forever. So thank you, and it's just a real privilege to be able to be here and say the things that at least I think are amazing about you. So congratulations.
Let's all congratulate the 2023 Ripple Effect Award winner, Craig Dellamore.
Wow. I wish I could say I prepared something as eloquent as the things that I've heard from this podium tonight, but I did not. Just sketched a couple of notes down, but I will tell you that when I first heard that I would be getting this award, I was pretty sure it was a mistake, because it's about people who have an effect on people at a wide range, and I'm not anything in the same class as Nicole Hannah-Jones, who won it one year, or some of the others. Jamie Calvin, who basically brought the Laquan McDonald case to light. No, I'm not those. I'm just a reporter, just somebody who gets to talk to people. Thank you. But I guess if I try to do anything, it's really born out of selfishness. I like to learn stuff, and I want to understand what's happening in our world. And so I look at my job as trying to help other people understand what's going on. And the only way you get to do that is by talking to people, and talking to people on all sides of an issue. And with any luck, you do it in a way that makes them open up, makes them willing to talk to you. And so in order to do that, you have to treat people with respect, you have to take them seriously. And so that's what I try to do, and I am very, very lucky at WBBM. I guess it has been about 4 decades. They have given me a gift, and that is a half-an-hour program on a Sunday mornings, at least on our station. It airs on 2 other stations. And here's a secret. If you stick around long enough in this business, people kind of assume you know what you're doing. A bad assumption, you shouldn't, but nevertheless, they're too busy to get detail-oriented with your stuff. As long as you don't make a big mistake, they let you kind of keep doing things. And so I don't have to do politics all the time, even though I'm the political editor. I can do whatever I want, and as long as I don't mess up, they let me do stories on whatever is interesting to me. And that is something that I've been blessed to do. I am just very happy that I have been able to not mess up, and that I do have people who listen, and I'm hoping that I help people understand better. I will tell you the one thing that has given me some encouragement, because obviously I'm at the other end of my career, and at some point I'm going to have to stop doing this. And once upon a time I was worried about what comes after us, because our business is under an attack. It's been under attack for a long time, but it's more intense now, it's more overt now. And we're at a time when people don't even either understand or accept what the truth is. They can look at facts and say, those don't exist. And so it's harder to do what we do, and you wonder if people are going to want to do it any longer. And so when I see younger people diving in and see, Jamie, I mean, I told her I aspire to be someone who could win her award, where you do uplift those voices. When I see young people like some of the people in the press room in City Hall or out on the streets, that tells me that people haven't given up on this business, and I hope they never do, but it also tells me that there are young people out there with talent, there are young people out there with a drive to do it well. And so I think the future is going to hold out okay. And so I thank all the young journalists I run across and try to encourage. And I thank the people who've encouraged me. Eric Chadron, that was just wonderful. I told him, he made us look like a genius for hiring him. So that's why I'm happy. But, and I thank my wonderful wife, Barbara, who has the patience to put up with me. She says I work 7 days a week. Not entirely true, but it's all right if I look at emails every once in a while. Anyway, but really, I'm not a person who likes to submit things for awards. I'm too lazy, or mostly, and I'm too busy to trying to figure out what my next story is going to be. But this is really heartwarming, it's humbling, and I thank you very much for this. Thank you.
He's a little self-deprecating, but I can tell you that there are many people who are impressed with that man and who want to walk in his footsteps. So, Craig Dellimore. For our final award of the evening, we debut a new category, the People's Choice Award, an award for both emerging and established media makers. They are people who have produced stories that have helped shift harmful narratives by presenting fuller ones. The media makers who receive the most nominations are the winners of the People's Choice Award. First, a few words about all of the nominees. Jamie Nesbitt Golden of Block Club Chicago is not only the winner of the Uplifting Voices Award, but also a finalist in this category of the People's Choice Award. That's a testament to her engaging work. Josh McGee is an investigative reporter for Mindsight News, the digital journalism organization that covers mental health. Josh covers the intersection of criminal justice and mental health with an emphasis on public records and data reporting. Ola Jiwa is a WBEZ data journalist who can extract and transform and load data to help find the stories within. Josh and Ola together systematically root out the truth, and in their collaboration with Block Club Chicago, we learn what happens when people suffering a mental health crisis call for help, and the concerns surrounding whether the new 988 mental health crisis line will reach Southside residents in need. The article's really been a stepping stone for more expansive work, with Josh heading an investigation looking at the systemic issues surrounding the state response to mental health crisis in 100 cities, and whether, for example, how often the use of force may be a factor when 911 is called and police officers respond. It is important, important work. Jorge Martinez writes for the Cicero Independiente, the bilingual community-based news organization that covers issues and people in Cicero and Berwyn. Jorge is a journalist, community activist, intent on exposing injustice in his community, and a Northwestern University journalism student. He's often written stories about queer issues and education issues. One recent story focuses on the lack of sleep for students and the impact that has on mental health. You could write that one about me, too. He tells stories about people who are underrepresented or feel disconnected from the community at large in Cicero, and he puts his reporting into action. For months, he worked on a story about why it's so difficult to run for public office in Cicero, and later he spearheaded and moderated a workshop on how to run for office and a candidates forum. Our next finalist is Sylvia Snowden, the host of the Politics Forum on CAN TV and a freelance print journalist. During her broadcast show, Sylvia talks about issues impacting people's daily life through a political lens, which means she's been instrumental in helping Chicagoans and others watching connect to what's going on in government and how it affects the lives we have. Sylvia began working as a behind-the-scenes person at CAN TV. Now she is a show host, delving deep into topics, questioning guests like Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx, or having an extensive conversation with Anjanette Young about a botched police raid on her home, and talking with incoming Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. Sylvia seeks much more than sound bites, and she also uses that expertise for print, and last year co-wrote a story about ballot problems with the race for the Cook County Sheriff's Office. So, now the drum roll. There are two winners this evening of the People's Choice Award, and the first is a journalist early in his career, but already making a mark, Jorge Martinez of Cicero Independiente.
I'm going to be completely honest, my heart is pounding right now. Frantically, I pulled out a pen and I started writing notes on the pamphlets of things I wanted to say. And I think I'm too nervous to say them, so I'm just going to bring it. I want to thank my family for motivating me to even consider writing as a career. I want to thank my wonderful editor, Irene, who's here in the crowd, who has cheered me along the way and trusted some 17-year-old, 16-year-old to write for her news site. I would like to thank all the editors at Cicero Independiente, and I also want to take a brief moment to talk about the work that we do. I'm sure that many of you hear Cicero and you think, oh, I know that street, Cicero Street, right? Cicero Avenue. But we're a town, Cicero and Berwyn, we're a community of mainly Latino folks who often don't have people fighting for us, who have advocates in our corner. And thanks to the work of people like Irene, we're changing that, and we're working actively to change that. I'm shaking, oh my God. Thank you, everyone. I feel so honored and intimidated to be in a room of such wonderful, thoughtful journalists, all looking at me. And thank you for just sharing space with me today.
The other inaugural winner of the People's Choice Award says their goal is to make Chicago, people love Chicago, and Chicago politics as much as they do. So let's applaud the People's Choice, Can TV's Sylvia Snowden.
Okay, Jameer, you said how, 5 minutes? Okay, because I want to use all 5. Well, well, won't he do it? Praise the Lord. And I say that in all seriousness. It's not lost on me that today is May 11th. I graduated from college, University of Missouri School of Journalism, on, thank you, go Tigers, on May 12th, 2006. And for the first 14 or so years after I graduated from school, I just could not seem to get a career going, find a rhythm, find anything that worked. And I finally prayed, and I said, you know, God, I'm flexible, right? Like, if this journalism thing isn't it, if I'm barking up the wrong tree, you can let me know. I will do something else. And I heard him clear as day say, nah, keep going. And I'm so happy I listened. I'm standing here only because God told me to keep going, and I just have to thank him, because otherwise I promise I'd be somewhere else doing something else. But I'm so thankful to God for that. To my dad, took a little longer than we thought, but you were very patient and very encouraging, and not afraid to tell anybody that I was your daughter and you were 10 toes down for me, so they had better support my show and not cancel on my interviews. And telling me if I mispronounced something, if I didn't go deep enough in depth, you have been there since the very beginning. I have to thank you. To my sister, who, like my father, watches every interview, watches every segment, never lets me go without letting me know that I could have maybe gone a little bit more in depth here. Done a little. Thank you, Liddy, to my brother-in-law, to my nephews. Thank you all for being such wonderful supporters of mine and always watching me. And because that's the sort of thing, especially if you're not sure if your career is making a difference in the world, that keeps you going. When people who care about you tell you, hey, I see what you're doing if no one else does. And I'm so grateful for that. To the public narrative, who, an organization I had admired for such a long time, I am overwhelmed and humbled that you thought of me for that. Stop it. Like, really, thank you. I just, anything I could do, seriously, to just keep the mission going and keep this work going, I'm glad to do it because it is so important. And to my coworkers at Can TV, and 2 of them are back there filming. All of you, thank you all so much. I'm the one you see. I do the writing and the editing and the chasing down of the people to convince them that it's important that they come on public access television, but there is an entire crew of folks who saw how passionate I was about this, and they decided to lend their time and their talents to making this everything that it could be. Even though we're not the big station, we're not the big name, they gave it 100%. They are the most talented team in Chicago, and I thank them for their work. To my fellow journalists, Chicago needs us. Chicago needs us. And Chicago needs us because we've seen time and time again that there are people who will absolutely positively run away with this city, take advantage of those who don't know any better, and not think twice about it. There are not people like us who are willing to do this work. And when I say like us, I mean especially the people in this room who don't do it for a check, who don't do it for a blue check, who do it because the work is important and telling the truth is important. I heard Kerry Washington say one time, and I was so floored because it came from Kerry Washington, that you may not be thinking about politics, but politics is thinking about you. And growing up in Chicago, on the city's south side, as a young black woman, I'm convinced that politics thinks about what to do with me every single day. My job is to let the folks on my side of town know what they're thinking. And if they don't like it, what we can do about it. And if they're thinking something that I don't think is a good idea, I'm not afraid to sit you down and ask you why you think it. So whether we are talking about 90,000 ballots tossed, and shout out to Maya Dumasova for the amazing work she helped me do on that story, especially when my sister went into labor early. I had to stop working the story a little bit to make sure my nephew got here okay, to exposing Police Superintendent David Brown's suspension in Dallas, or sitting down with the mayor and asking her if she honestly expected me to believe that her raising those bridges kept the entire city safe when people were trapped on their side of town with rioters and looters for hours without any sort of assistance. That's why we do this work, to make sure those people who don't get their voices told have an opportunity to make sure their vantage point is considered all of this. And lastly, as I take my seat, I wanted to dedicate this award to two special people. I have to dedicate this to my late mom. I know I hate to like quote Tupac, but there's no way I could pay you back. But the plan is to show you that I understand. The other person is my late cousin, Ricky. Rick, I just want you to know that your murder, your death awakened something in me. And the way that the media spoke about you lit something in me. And I hate every day that you had to leave here, but I appreciate understanding that my job is to make sure that people who didn't have a fair shot get a fair shot on political forum, get a fair shot when they sit down with me, have their vantage point considered. This is for you too. Thank you all so much, Jameer. Thank y'all again. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Cheryl Corley, and I can say, what a night, right? It has been such a pleasure hosting this evening. You know, I have been in this business for many years, covering the city and plenty of other places in the country, and it is always so inspiring to come to the public narrative event and hear the stories, to learn about the extraordinary work that these journalists are doing, and to learn about the work of public narrative, and of course to celebrate Studs Terkel. So congratulations again to all of the awardees and the nominees of the night. We honor them, and it's also important that we pay tribute to public narrative and the work it does to carry out its mission of connecting journalists and people on the ground and in communities, because it allows us to hear, to read, and to see stories that are full of nuance and fuller perspectives. And that's not easy work. It takes determination, it takes spirit, it takes making connections. And Jamira and all of those who work and volunteer for public narrative have all of that and more.
I want to thank you all for being here tonight. This has been an incredible event to celebrate great journalism, the hard work that you all do, but even more so your connection to the city. In 34 years, you've supported us as we've connected with journalists and researchers and youth and members of law enforcement. And it's been a challenge, but we've navigated that challenge together. And I truly, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you all for your contributions to this organization.